Hey guys, welcome to another episode of View from the Cheap Seats, our look at the week in sports, a.k.a. the W-E-A-K in sports, the week in sports. And there's a lot of week this week.
Oh, yeah.
Kurt Schilling in the news again, and you know that's not good. It's not like Kurt Schilling is in the news because he apologized to people for his bad behavior. No, he doubled down.
We've got an insane chess story that involves vibrating anal beads.
Okay, that's number 2. And information, and we'll get deep into the Dion of it all and sort of the reaction to Dion. There's Travis Kelce's ex-girlfriend weighing in on Tay-Tay being in the box. All that stuff. A voicemail from Ozzie Guillen later.
But and my call.
Our guest today is Mike Hall from the BTN Network, anchor of the BTN Network. He does the big show as well as the pregame football show. He's in his prime season right now, and we get him just to talk everything from the conference realignment, the idea that the playoff is going to get expanded next year, and so many other things about the Big Ten and Prime and all sorts of everything going on in college football. It's a great discussion. Dude is so smart. But first, let's talk about Prime. Because the biggest thing this week, or last week, is not that Deion Sanders lost and he didn't
walloped.
lose. Colorado got their butts handed to them by Oregon. Oregon was up 35-0 at the half, and I think they had like 60 yards of offense. And Travis Hunter wasn't going to change the outcome of that game.
No, at most maybe they win 35-14, 13 or 14.
It was
35.
Never in doubt.
No.
It was one of the most lopsided games you'll see between two top 25 teams. It was insane. I mean,
it reminded me of like those old, like when Alabama would play an early season game against Michigan or Penn State or whatever, and they would just destroy them.
So it was a butt whooping, and the speech
that Dan Lanning made before a game,
which I don't think should have been televised, but they televised it. He literally went in on just the idea of what Oregon football is versus what he thought or perceived what Colorado football
or what
was.
He needed to paint. This is my argument. What he needed to paint their opponent as. When you are making a locker room speech and communicating with your team, your job is to vilify, dehumanize, and to make the opponent the enemy. So if it is your job to do that, then you are allowed to exaggerate their intentions, maybe wrongly, and say, look, Colorado's all about the clicks. Colorado's all about the pub.
It's Hollywood versus what we're doing up here in Eugene.
We make decisions. Our game is played on the grass with our pads. That's what we do. He's trying to set up a scenario where he's telling his team, you guys have put in the work, and the work will prevail. If you are doing it for clicks, the clock's going to ring at some point. Your time will be up, and you will get destroyed on the field.
Now, is that true? No. I think Deion Sanders is trying to win every football game he can, not trying to boost his social media. So it's wrong, but it is.
When you're making a locker room speech, you can't get into the nuances of the other team. You have to blast them, and you have to rile up your team.
That's right.
So that's what Dan Lanning did. Fine. They go out, they destroy them. They really, really destroy them deep into the game. They keep scoring touchdowns.
They destroy them in a way that people who initially said, this is a team that could make the playoff. I mean, Colorado's so good, and you don't know how good Deion Sanders.
Maybe they can surprise a team.
Surprise people. They win more games than you think.
And I understand Dan Lanning wanting to lay it on thick, because I'm sure all week long what he heard was, watch out, Oregon. Watch out,
Oregon! You're going to lose.
Oregon, you might get caught off guard. This team, we don't know how good they are.
Everyone who didn't take them too seriously.
So all the talk goes about Colorado, and so I understand why that narrative was in his face and in his mind. And that's
60 Minutes interview. What other college football coach has done a 60 Minutes interview this year?
They weren't interviewing Dan Lanning on 60 Minutes.
No.
And Oregon's back in a way. You could have interviewed them.
That's right.
So I get it. I get why he was upset. What I don't get is Skip Bayless coming on the air and saying Dan Lanning's rant against Deion Sanders before the game was somehow a racist rant by white coaches against a black. No, it wasn't. It wasn't. I'm sure there are. Who's the coach at Oklahoma State?
Mike Gundy.
That's a guy who might make a racist rant against
Absolutely. He had to apologize on camera uncomfortably to Nick Chubb, I believe it was.
Yes.
Because of some stuff that he said, and he participated in the OAN network or whatever, and he just...
So that's a guy who maybe if he says something, like this was not a Fuzzy Zeller making jokes about Tiger Woods because he's angry that Tiger Woods is successful. moment. That's not what this Dan Lanning thing was. And to call it that, Skip Bayless is irresponsible.
Yeah, it's fanning the flames of something that is
a fire that you started.
This isn't a so what Skip Bayless is doing is not a locker room speech to his crew, that he's megaphoning it out to everyone,
and he's misrepresenting what's being said so that he can get clicks.
And right, Skip, you are smarter than that.
Come on, Skip.
We've known Skip Bayless. He's smarter than that.
I don't like this.
He should know. That's the thing that bothers me, is that he should know better. That's not what's going on. Keyshawn Johnson similarly said, and he said it with a believability that was like,
But I don't buy it.
I don't buy it either. That like other coaches were feeding Dan Lanning information about Colorado. And it would have to be, I guess, the coach of Colorado State. It would have to be TCU's coach. It would have to be like, those are the people who have to, at Nebraska, Matt Rule maybe feeding, or assistant coaches that were feeding information to, like, why couldn't they just turn on the tape and watch the tape, which is probably what they did.
It's not like Oregon had suddenly a different game plan than what they normally do. They play fast. They spread it out. They play quick.
Oregon played their brand of football
and won.
And it destroyed.
It's not like they did something so different within their game plan.
It's not like they knew every single play that Deion was and that Shedeur Sanders was calling out there. It just, to me, that Keyshawn thing in the same way in the other direction, I'm like, I know you talk to some people and they may have said that, but you need to check yourself before you say, hey, this influenced the outcome of this game. Because I think that's dangerous too.
It is.
Because you paint the narrative that like, oh, all these people want to see Deion lose. Everybody wants to see a Deion lose. And by the way, there are coaches out there, because Deion will recruit the hell out of them. Deion will take your best player. Deion will take your wife, meaning he'll take the player.
He'll take who you're counting on in the next couple of years
in the transfer portal to build his team. Who wouldn't want to play for Deion? So yeah, you got to worry about that. But like, are coaches really feeding information to other teams to make Deion lose? I think Deion's already won the fight. He's already shown that it's a cool place. He tripled their win total from last year. Yeah. He's going to win 6 games at least this year.
Go to a bowl game. He's going to go to a bowl game.
He's already done with his worst team. You know what I mean? Moving forward, he's just going to have good teams, and I think ultimately he's going to go coach the Cowboys. That's what I think personally, but we'll see what happens. But anyway,
he's definitely going to get a look from the NFL, even after this year. I think.
Everybody calm down. He could coach the Bears. You never know. But everybody calm down on every side.
Raiders.
On every side. Everybody. Atlanta. He could coach Atlanta. That would be amazing if he did. But everybody calm down on every side. Deion Sanders and Colorado ran into the buzzsaw that is Oregon. They're not as good of a team, and that's all that happened. They got their butts kicked. We'll see how they do against USC.
Prime handled it beautifully.
He did. He handled it beautifully. He handled it better than everybody else. He was like, look, get me now because I'm going to be better in the future. That's a great motivating thing for his team. Yeah, we lost. Yeah, we got our butts handed to us, but get me now. Because in the future, you won't be able to
get me.
I love it. Let's take a break. On the other side, we're going to talk much more college football with the great Mike Hall from the Big Ten Network, anchor of the Big Show and the pregame football show on Saturdays. It's the Sklar Brothers. This is View from the Cheap Seats. Don't go anywhere. Hey guys, welcome back to the show. As promised, our buddy, our friend, he's amazing. We've done stuff for him. He always comes through for us.
I watch his show.
I love the way he anchors the Big Ten Network. He's a big reason why that thing is great. And we say it every time he comes to do this show or whenever he does Jim Rome's show with us. A dude who worked so hard, got his start winning a competition to be an ESPN anchor, and then proved that it wasn't a flash in the pan. Parlayed that into a really great job in Chicago at the Big Ten Network. Mike Hall, thanks for joining us, buddy.
Don't rule out the chance that I was a flash in the pan. I got time to prove
you still
that
you still could be a flash in the pan.
There's still
wait, how long is a flash? How big is the pan is my question.
How big is the flash?
And how long is the flash?
It'd be a 19-year flash at this point, but I still got time.
It's
you're
more of
solid, dude.
If we're considering a flash like exposing yourself in a park, this is more of a streak in the pan.
You could have done
this is a streak in the pan.
You could have done way worse. You could have said something terrible on the air on ESPN News, and like all of a sudden,
they're like,
you could have gotten punched
in
in the face by Michael Kim during an ESPN News. I don't know what could have happened. You didn't let it happen. happened. You, again, parlayed it to the point where people said, we need to have this guy anchor this new network. And you went to a place, like, how could you have known? That's an interesting place to start. That, like, I almost don't want to get my Big Ten info from ESPN. It's going to be too cursory. Like, as a Big Ten fan and a fan of a school in the Big Ten, I want to hear it from you guys.
Well, first off, you don't know that I didn't punch Kimmer.
That's true.
You can't prove that
we did some fun segments with Michael Kim.
Yes,
I'll just say
love him.
Yeah, there was no social media then, so our first fights in the newsroom were
love it.
Not less public.
Yes.
Yeah, it is wild when. So in 2007, I left ESPN after 3 years there to come to do the Big Ten Network, and it was not a guarantee that it would be a thing. There were no conference networks. There's plenty of jokes about, who's going to watch Indiana Northwestern and why would you blah, 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 and I get it. Mm-hmm. But it felt like it was a risk worth taking. And the wild thing is, to your point, man, how things have changed. ESPN doesn't have any Big Ten games anymore. This is the start of the brand new TV deal. The only time you'll see any Big Ten team on ESPN, or ABC, is if it's a road game. And that's crazy to think of because they were so important to the Big Ten and vice versa for 30, 40 years of television?
Yep. Yes. And you still can't discount 3 amazing teams in the top 10 that are significant to college football. So you're missing all those things. Like, why wouldn't ESPN want, kudos to Fox and kudos to the Big Ten for saying, we're going to take these games
and we're going to bet on people wanting to know more and go deeper within their worlds.
Yeah, that was an interesting bet, to say, like, look, it was
pre-podcasting. So as podcasting grew, as people began to be more specialized and love going super deep, like, I don't think ESPN would be able to show, spring practice of a specific team. There's just too many teams. But I, as a Big Ten fan, not only do I want to watch Michigan's spring practice, I want to watch Ohio State's spring practice. I want to watch Penn State's spring. That's a good bet because now here we are and people want that.
It is true. That was one of those first things when we put a spring football game on in, April or whatever. We weren't sure anyone would watch, but then they did. And then those other things that you didn't think would matter, showing practices in August or
fall camp. Yep.
Volleyball has exploded. The other day we had 500,000 people watch a volleyball match.
Nebraska's
Nebraska's
volleyball team at the stadium, at Memorial Stadium, 90,000 people watching a women's volleyball game.
Wisconsin's #1 right now. How do I know that? Because I know the coverage, and it's like there is a certain joy, and I think of going into this regionality of things, especially when you live far away. That's what's sort of interesting is that when you move away from Big Ten country like we have, and there is a diaspora certainly from, schools like Northwestern and schools like Michigan and schools like Wisconsin. People start from the coast, they come to this school, and they go back. You were like, how do I access this stuff on a deeper level? We want those things, and now this is
it's just cool, man.
It is wild, though, because now you are in Big Ten country. Starting next year,
crazy.
The craziness is it's true.
Crazy. So so many it's amazing that you're kind of involved in college sports the way you have because of the sea change that has happened. Because
first transfer
portal, NIL has literally changed the game in such an enormous way, and then conference realignment, and next year.
12-team
expansion of the playoff system means that
we could see three Big Ten teams in the playoffs.
I think that's as significant as the wild card in baseball, right?
Oh, yeah. It's such an incredible shift. Just look at this year's top 15 teams.
That's what I was going to say.
Oregon, Washington, USC, on top of Penn State, Michigan, Ohio State. If there was a 12-team playoff, how many from the Big Ten would be in right now? And to your macro point about how things have changed, when the network launched 2007, you guys were Michigan fans. How many Michigan, and this is Michigan we're talking about, how many Michigan football games were on TV a year? 5?
Yeah, a handful.
6?
A handful.
Yeah,
you wouldn't see all of them.
you can now see every Northwestern game.
Yeah.
Like they're not going to be the number 2 team in the country, but the way that world has shifted, it's amazing. The NIL and the transfer portal and all that stuff. If that just happened, one of those in this decade, you'd be like, wow. What
That's
a crazy
massive
decade. And there's
thing,
been
but
6 of them.
Right. All that in the last couple of years. It's kind of like, to me, as significant of a change as smartphones were to people's lives. The idea that your computer is in your hand and is in your pocket, and that changes the way. All these things are massive changes, and I hope you stay there at the helm, or sort of in your post there as all this changes, because we're going to quickly drift into, I think, 2 major conferences. The thing that makes me sad is now that we live in sort of, I'll call it Pac-12, it was old Pac-10 country, okay, out here, is that there is something sweet about the Stanford-Cal game. There is something sweet about, UCLA, USC, which doesn't...
Oregon State.
Washington State. There's something beautiful about that and only living out here on the West Coast for 25 years almost, do we understand that more deeply. So I think what's probably going to happen, you tell me if you agree with this or not, it becomes 2 massive conferences that sort of mirror the NFC and the AFC in football. The SEC and the Big Ten become the big 2. And then stuff gets chopped up back to the regions. Divisions, which sort of mimic the regions that existed in the old time. I would love to get to that. To me, that's your off-ramp. That's your pathway forward, because you do want to keep those regional things, I think, because the Washington State fans have a hatred for Husky fans in a way that we can't understand.
Well, first off, I totally agree. It is okay to say, I hate that we're losing history and traditions and rivalries, because I think that's what made college sports special.
Agreed.
When you would see, I'm a Missouri grad, right?
Yeah.
When Missouri would play Kansas, they'd be like, wow, they've done this 122 years in a row.
Know.
And you're like, that's spanning 5 generations. That's what makes it so cool. And so when a Washington State goes away, or a Stanford Cal becomes, I guess they'll still play, but when those longtime rivalries, even when it's 60, 80 years of tradition, that's awesome. And I hate that those things are going away, as much as I'm excited for the fact that a USC will play Ohio State more regularly.
Agreed.
And Wisconsin UCLA will happen. It's interesting that Penn State and Oregon will be playing frequently. And all that is super cool. But to your point of the conferences, what it reminds me of is cable TV and the bundle.
Yeah.
Right? Everyone was tired that cable TV costs too much. And the last few years, streaming happened. And now everybody's tired of paying too much for streaming. And they're like, what we should do? We should bundle all these streamers together.
Right.
So that it works more simply. It's the same concept of what you're saying. If we're going to have these massive conferences, let's go down to the regional aspects of it, which is what we basically had back in the day.
We're going around a cul-de-sac and ending back up at the same house.
And the truth is, I think fans, from a fan's perspective, if you can get back to that, won't care about the overall umbrella.
So I will add to that, the 12-team playoff would allow you to want to schedule tougher games, because you're like, I can drop a game at the beginning of the season. Its strength of schedule is going to matter.
Yeah, I think strength of schedule is going to play a lot more into college football.
It's not who you lose to, it's who you beat. So
kind of like the NCAA basketball tournament.
And we saw this past week with basically a coin flip. Ohio State beats Notre Dame, a massive, probably the biggest game on the slate last week.
One question, are they tough? It's hard to know whether or not Ohio State is a tough team.
They beat them, and they move up in the polls. They move up. They jump Michigan. They jump the other teams that haven't played tough games. And so you can be rewarded for scheduling a tough game and winning it, and not worry that your whole season's over if you lose it. If there's
10-2 teams will make the playoffs if they're really good.
Yes, and they should. And that is, if you ask what is my one big problem with college football outside of that kind of the macro of conferences are going away that have been around forever, it would be that you still got, I don't want to rip on Michigan, because this wasn't Michigan's fault that UCLA bailed on them. They were supposed to have a tough non-conference opponent. It's not their fault that happened. But there are 3 non-conference games where and you see that everywhere. Georgia's played garbage. It happens all the time, no matter your conference. And you're right, guys. If we can chip away at that, and say, if this new playoff, if they can set up that it actually matters what your resume is. I mean, I've told you guys this before. I'll go on a 10-minute rant about the absurdity of the eye test, and that shouldn't matter. It should matter what you've actually done, not what my brilliant eyeballs see that yours can't. Like, that will help schedule better teams to make these kind of crummy games hopefully disappear, and hopefully there'd be a peer pressure and that would snowball down. So maybe everybody's got one kind of crummy game,
sure,
but then you're actually playing good teams in the non-conference. And the extra part of that is like, well, then that allows, let's say, a Washington to play a Stanford or an Arizona State or someone that they actually have ties to and their fans have ties to.
Or Washington State.
So not only is it it's a better game, but then it's better for the fans too.
Right. So you schedule that Washington State game, even if they're not in the same conference, which I think ultimately they will be in the end. But even if they're not, you schedule that every year. So you still have that rivalry, and it's like Michigan, Notre Dame for years and years and years. What it's going to do, and again, you talk about the eye test, because the eye test to me is linked to recruiting. And the difference between college sports, it'd be like if the Chicago Bears for the next 10 years had the first 20 picks in the draft.
Now you're Georgia.
Now you're Georgia and Alabama. You know what I mean? First 20 picks in the draft. Now, NIL has worked to try and move some of that. You sort of look at a guy like a coach can come in and change that in terms of like Deion Sanders can come in and say, hey, man, you want to play for me? I'm way cooler than any of these other coaches.
Yeah, you want to hang with me or Jimbo Fisher?
Yeah.
You decide.
What do you want to do? And so as a result, like, he can level the playing field a little bit with a coolness factor at Colorado, and then with an NIL package and transfer portal, he can start to build his team in that way. And that sort of limits it. But what you're saying is get rid of the eye test, because the eye test will always favor Alabama. Because you look at these players and you're like, they're 5-star kids with 5 stars behind them, as opposed to a team that might be a great team with some guys who have been coached up.
Completely agree with that. I'm going to be on the campus of Minnesota this week, and even though they've had kind of a struggle of a year, we're going to do this interview with Tyler Nubin, who's their defensive back. He's seen as a first-round draft pick next year. That dude was a 3-star recruit. Like, that happens all the time, where someone who's actually a really good college player wasn't a good high school player, and so your recruiting rankings would be holding you back, and that's so dumb. Like, what actually matters is what he is and what he's done against who he's played, in the same way that it doesn't matter. If you're rewarding the eye test, you're almost always rewarding, well, who's got the most 4 and 5 stars? Right. And that doesn't necessarily matter. I mean, on the whole, yes, as a macro, you would rather have, like Jerry DiNardo, one of our analysts, once said to me when I was talking about my frustrations with recruiting, he was like, I agree with what you're saying, but on the whole, would you rather have Alabama's roster or Oregon State's? Well, yeah, everyone would rather have Alabama's roster, but that doesn't mean it's 100% valid at all times.
But more specific, so Witherspoon last year, and then that speaks, at Illinois as a great, and the other defensive back that they had at Illinois who was incredible, and that speaks to Ryan Walters' ability to coach kids up and take those small, Mike D'Antonio did it for years in terms of taking guys who were took tough kids that weren't highly rated and turned them into
3
NFL
stars that were underappreciated, should have probably been low 4 stars, mid 4 stars, but they got overlooked, and they come in, and then he creates a whole vibe where they're calling the D-backs, the no-fly zone, and then they have an identity, and then they have this thing that they're playing for, and they're saying, wait, we're part of something bigger, as opposed to all these times we see like a 5-star going like, let me get mine, let me have my play, as opposed to being part of something, which which is kind of some of the and I say problem very in quotes that Ohio State has kind of had in terms of the development of their defensive backs has not been, and their defensive ends. You look like a guy like JTT and Sawyer, and you're saying to yourself, those were number 1 and number 2 guys.
These guys should be, in my opinion, just in the backfield sacking the quarterback 4 and 5 times a game. They have 0 sacks the entire year. That's crazy. Like, what's going on? They're not going, yes, Notre Dame's tackles are insane. They're both 2 NFL players right there. Okay, you got to go around those guys. But in the other games, I mean, this is insane. So it is really about how you develop people, which I hope will get rewarded moving forward.
And more than anything, I'm just taking away how much I respect that you didn't even bother trying to say Tui Maloau. You're like, it's JTT. Let's just leave it simple. There's no point trying to show up.
I thank JTT for giving me that out. You know, like you can say JTT, you know who that is.
Well, I thought you meant the second biggest lead actor on Home Improvement.
Jonathan Taylor Thomas, yes.
May he rest in peace.
And I know he's not dead. I just want him to get a good night's sleep. He probably has a little kid. He needs to so we touched on Michigan State. This big news this week from Michigan State. Today or yesterday, Mel Tucker fired.
He's going to fight it. He is going to fight it.
He will definitely fight it. And there is a narrative where it looks like they wanted to get rid of him. He wasn't performing up to the level they were. They got over their skis and gave this guy a massive contract based on one season. And now, how does Michigan State fix this? Is D'Antonio the answer? Like, if you're brought in, my call, and you're like, fix Michigan State in 5 years.
D'Antonio's the bridge. I don't know if he's the answer, but
what do you think, for real?
Well, Pat Forty is one of the great sports writers, and he was saying if you take a step back and give the treetops view, Michigan State's a great job. Like, they're going to get not whoever they want, but they're going to get a really good coach because, first off, you're in, as you refer to it, the Big Two, right? If there are two conferences that actually do matter, you're in one of it.
Right.
But second off, this is your last year of divisions. So Michigan State was stuck having to play Michigan every single year, and Penn State and Ohio State. And that's going away. So their schedule is actually, in theory, going to get a little more manageable. So you're in a school in the conference that matters. Your schedule's going to get a little bit better. And let's be clear, like you referenced, his contract was massive for having one good year as a head coach ever. And the point of that is they have money. So it's not like finances are going to be a problem at Michigan State. I don't know necessarily where they're going to go. If they want to go get a hot shot, a coordinator, maybe it's a defensive guy like a Jim Leonard who did so well at Wisconsin.
Yep.
Maybe they want to go get a coach who's proven it at, a step below, like Leipold at Kansas is doing right now, which fit well in East Lansing.
Yeah.
I just think whoever they really want, they're going to have no problem getting.
So I think Michigan State needs to look around the country. This is what we say to comics. Look at whose people are like, I want to get into comedy. I want to do this. What do I, they ask us, and sometimes
first of all, don't.
First of all, it's a bad idea. Second of all, you need 10 years to even decide if you think you can do it. But the first thing you should do is look at comics that are out there doing it right now and figure out why are they great. How then can I shine that lens on me and say, how can I be great? So if I'm Michigan State, I'm out there looking at K-State. I'm out there looking at Oregon State. I'm just saying states, but I'm saying these programs, Oregon State, K-State,
They could get a guy like Matt Campbell, who a few years ago was a massive, massive hot commodity. Now I think to some degree we're understanding that a lot of that was because Brock Purdy is just fantastic, and we're seeing that in the NFL. However, you see that, like, if he's given a good quarterback, he could create a system that works.
There are people out there, but I'm saying you look at those programs, and like K-State is one of those programs that, like, they'll win the Big 12. They did. You get a few good players in there, and you get a good system, and you have a toughness, and like K-State was always tough, just this tough team. And so you say to yourself, well, Oklahoma is always the team, and you're like, but K-State can beat them even though they have all the talent and all the 5 stars and that. That's what I think Michigan State should be angling for. The thing is, and what they're up against a little bit is what Michigan was up against for 20 years with Ohio State, that no matter how good you were, there was this other team that's like just down the road from you that is just that much better right now. And it's hard to overcome that, which I think the Michigan State's going to have some growing pains in the next couple of years.
And what they might do, too, to your point is, well, what did we do 15 years ago with D'Antoni? I mean, there's only been a small amount of teams that have even made the playoff in the 10-year history of that thing. And Michigan State's one of them. Because D'Antonio got them there.
Yes.
So what can they learn about the way he recruited? He did really well in the state of Ohio with kids the Buckeyes said no thanks to.
That's right.
He did really well developing 2- and 3-star kids and taking them to become NFL players. And so I wonder how much do they go, the call's coming from inside the house? Let's look what we did just a little while ago to get ourselves to be a nationally relevant program as recent as 6-7 years ago.
So we talked briefly about Deion, and it's like you're in the college football game. I know your stock and trade is the Big Ten, but how do you not look at this
Colorado and what's that?
It's the biggest story. I mean, even when he loses, there is,
and we talked about this at the top of the show.
The top of the show. There's all this controversy. Keyshawn Johnson said, I talked to some people in the know who said that all these coaches were giving Oregon all this information so that they could beat Colorado, and which I don't know if I fully believe that. I don't think Keyshawn would lie about that. Why would he bring that detail to the table on a show? It's like he was speaking in a way that was very much like he knew something and he'd spoken to many people.
And Skip
Bayless making the thing about Dan Lanning's speech pregame. Dan Lanning did not go on the media to make the rounds before that game and say those things. He said in a closed door thing that happened to be shot, but he's trying to get his team going. And he's like, I don't think he was taking any shots, and I didn't think it was racist at all. I think it was, which is weird stuff to call. But again, in the wake of it, all the headlines are Deion. All of them are the way. It's kind of unbelievable what he's been able to do. Have you seen something like this in the world of college football since all the years that you've been covering it?
No, I mean, I remember talking to people who know more about football than I do, and they were saying, a win for Deion would be 3 victories this season. And he got that in 3 weeks.
I know.
And he got that against 2 rivals for the program and a team that played in the playoff last year.
That's right.
So, it's incredible what he's been able to do so quickly. I remember early on, the only thing that I really thought he did that was poor taste was when he talked in front of his players on camera saying, I brought my own luggage and my luggage is Louis and you guys need that. I mean, listen, if you want to say that, fine, but don't embarrass the kids on camera. Sure. However, that was one thing he said one time. That's the only real complaint I can find about it.
He's been amazing.
Great for the sport.
He's been amazing. After the loss, I thought his comments were unbelievable.
Get me now.
First of all, he gave all the credit to Oregon in the best, I'll say it, menschiest way possible of saying, this team beat us.
They kicked our ass.
They kicked our ass up and down, fair and square, and good. This is where we're at right now. This told us where we're at. He was very cool about it. He didn't try and revisionist history.
He didn't try and go, well, we didn't have our best player and our guys out.
No excuses.
No excuses. Get us now because that's when you got us. I think there's a real chance they win 6, maybe 7 games this year, which means they're going to go to a bowl, which means they will be in the conversation all the way into the end of December, which means they can recruit off of that.
He'll recruit like crazy. So how does that affect Big Ten? How does that affect Big Ten teams? The number 1 recruit in 2025, quarterback Bryce Underwood in Michigan, is a huge Michigan recruit that they want so badly to come to that school. It is a game changer. I'm like, you bet you're now going to have to fight Colorado for him.
Right. And I think, you stumbled onto something I think is great. As a head coach, we're used to, he's got great nicknames, Primetime, Neon, Deion. Mm-hmm. But now that he's Mensch on the bench. I don't know how we haven't, let's trademark that right now.
On the bench.
He is the Mensch on the bench.
That's a good one.
Let's do it. Let's get it going. I do think it's one of those things where how do you measure success? And again, when you expand the playoff, now success is you got to go 12-0 or 11-1. With an early loss and then come back and win your conference championship and then you make it into the playoff. Because it's so small.
Right.
Next year, success is measured a little bit differently. And
I think while you're right about his recruiting, the transfer portal is, I think, where he's going to make his hay. I think of the top 20 kids, 15 of them are going to be really interested in playing for Deion, even if it's only for 1 year.
Sure.
So I think that's where next year he's going to blow people away.
That's true, and that's how he gets better faster, by saying these are proven talent. And again, I look at kind of what Michigan did in the transfer portal this offseason, and they got some guys that are they recruited fine, but their transfer portal pickups, the combination of the two, have really elevated that class.
I was talking to a basketball coach this past winter about the transfer portal, and this coach was saying they're bringing in 5 freshmen this year, and they're a really regarded class. And the coach was saying, this is the last time I'm ever going to do that. And I was like, why? It's a really good class. And they're saying, well, yeah, it is a good class, but they're freshmen and they're going to have to learn. And I don't have to be patient anymore because I'm at a big program and I can go get someone who's a 3-year starter at NC State. So why wouldn't I do that instead of waiting and hoping that a freshman develops? I can go get someone who's good right away, and it's going to affect everybody.
Or worse, that a freshman doesn't develop, gives you a mediocre year, and then goes to the NBA. Like 2 players I can name for Michigan, like
Musa Diabate and Caleb Houston. 2 guys who,
5-star guys.
They're great players, and they could be great players in the NBA at some point. They could be. They might not be, but they might be. Maybe they're going to glean from the G League where they're playing. I mean, I don't know. I think they both would have been better off staying in college for at least one more year. But you get all the growing pains of a freshman, like you just said, and flashes of athleticism, a good play or 2, but then like a 3 for 12 shooting night because the game is none
different.
of the benefit. And who suffers the program because they're like, all right, I'm going to go because my potential.
I can get a late first round.
The eye test, so to speak, the dreaded eye test is the thing that's going to give me potential-wise in my measurables and how I operate in like personal workouts for these teams is going to show exactly what this is going to be. And so I agree with you. I think but you have to get the right guy for the program. It has to be someone who not only has 3 years of experience, not only has done great things, but can come in and fit what you're trying to do in your program. And because basketball is so few guys, you get 2 transfers and you can change. That's exciting as we're on the precipice of basketball season about to start. Like, that is amazing. I mean, obviously, Purdue in the Big Ten is kind of the class of the Big Ten, and I would say Michigan State and Illinois, they're both good. But, it's wide open after that. It's wide open after that, which is kind of exciting, too.
I agree. Fully agree.
All right, should we take a break?
Let's take a break.
Take a break. We come back with Mike Hall. I'll tell you how you can support him and follow him and watch him. And we have a couple of quick hits we'll get to. This is View from the Cheap Seats with the great Mike Hall from the Big Ten Network. We'll be right back. Hey, guys, welcome back to the show. Mike Hall at Mike Hall BTN. Is that what it is?
Mike Hall here.
Mike Hall here. At Mike Hall here. Follow him on Twitter or X, whatever you call it. Instagram, is that you on Instagram as well?
I am Mike Hall TV. I don't know why it's different, but it is different.
Mike Hall TV. But the show is the big show, B1G show. Is that correct?
That's what we do most of our nights. I do our football pregame show on Saturdays called Tailgate, and then random play-by-play in studio throughout the year, too, for
Just
hoops.
watch him. He's so good at what he does. Adds humor, and at the same time gets the information out. It's just we love him. All right, let's get into some quick hits, shall we? So biggest story on the football field always is Coach Prime now that we are. Except, I don't know if you get a chance to watch your NFL games as well, but obviously the biggest story was Taylor Swift at the Chiefs game. Now, we've hung out with Travis Kelce. The dude is amazing.
Funny, cool, nice.
I get it. And by the way, because of Taylor Swift in the box, sales of his jersey went up 400%. Like, if she wears a stylized Travis Kelce.
If we could get her to wear one Sklar Country shirt, we'd be set for life.
Set for life. So that's what happened. But it's not everybody's happy about this, Mike Hall. Travis Kelce's ex-girlfriend says Taylor Swift should be cautious. Like, she now is coming out with statements. Now, they have not even announced that they're together. We know they're together because she's in the box and she's cheering for him. I mean, a little early in a relationship to be hanging with the mom, don't you think?
The mom.
Yeah, that is bizarre.
When do you bring your girlfriend to meet your parents? I mean, unless they've been together for a long time and we don't know about it, that is intense.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, not to interrupt, but here's my worry is that this is the most dangerous thing Travis Kelce has ever done. He has to be perfect. He can't have one screw up, because if he does, the world's most famous entertainer and her billions of fans will turn on him forever, A. But B, one of the greatest songwriters in the modern era is going to destroy him.
I know. You literally will become the next album. It's just
the next album could be 86, 87.
86, 87 would be the next album.
Oh, let's go.
Let's do that. I mean, so this is what Maya Benbury said that he said that Kelsey was unfaithful. One time, only time will tell, but like the saying always goes, once a cheater, always a cheater. You know, she was so happy to talk to the dailymail.com. Said, Taylor seems like such a fun girl. That's a bit of a knock.
Dig. That's a dig.
She seems like such a fun girl is what you say to someone when you hate them.
Or like a comedian, like you were having a lot of fun up there.
She seems like she was having fun.
You were doing your thing.
With a beautiful spirit. Again, how much does this girl hate the other girl? Hate Taylor Swift. So I wish her the best of luck. No, you don't.
Like
no,
that's
you
all,
don't.
like if you could say what she said in like a mob voice and it sounds so foreboding.
She seems like a fun
She
girl
got
with
a
a beautiful
spirit.
shame.
Be ashamed if something happened.
More to happen.
Yeah.
Someone with a beautiful spirit. I wish
hate
her the best of luck.
May she rest in peace.
May she rest in. If I didn't advise her to be smart, the 31-year-old continued, I'm sure by now she's mastered the ability to see who is really there for her and who is just using her. This woman is going after Travis Kelce. And by the way, my call is right. If you think this is happening to the dailymail.com, you better not wrong her. You better part ways.
Every basketball player that got involved with a Kardashian
Straight down to the ground.
into the toilet, Lamar Odom face down in his doorway.
Who's the guy? The guy who played for the New Jersey Nets?
Chris Humphries.
Chris Humphries
was
doing
married
that.
to Kardashian, and then every time he touched the ball, people booed him.
Every time he touched the ball on the road, people
You
would
don't
boo.
want that smoke. You don't want it. You don't want it. You've got enough shit to deal with. You've been up close with athletes. They need a solitary focus on their sport at the highest level.
So this is what Kelsey responded to it on page 6. He said we weren't even together long enough for me to cheat on her. They were only together for a couple of months. It's like, come on. Now who's using who?
I was cheating with her on someone else. How can she be mad about
I
it?
cheated with you? Oh, okay.
No, I'm sure he didn't say
to
that.
me, it's just amazing. Like, so you get all of that come out, and now if they're together, there's going to be a litany of people who come out and say, watch out, Taylor.
Well, no. I have in my house, I have 2 frying pans that I use to make all my delicious food. I'm going somewhere with this.
Okay, I'm curious.
One of the
Mike is like, what are you about to say?
One, I saw his eyes roll. Here we go. One of the frying pans, the handle gets hot, and the other one doesn't. And every once in a while, I got to say out loud, this is the frying pan where the handle gets hot. So I have to be super careful, and sometimes I'll forget, and I'll touch the hot frying pan, and I'm like, I'm messing with heat all the time. Why did I get this frying pan? Why do I have to remind myself daily that this frying pan handle
Because you
gets
love
hot?
the frying pan.
Because
It's
it does
beautiful.
well. It's beautiful.
It
and
writes
performs
great
well.
music.
It performs well, and my daughter loves it. All right, no, but so that's my thing. I'm stuck in a thing where you're like, it's a better frying pan, but it gets hot.
He realized.
You got a frying pan that writes great music. Don't treat it bad, or it's
No.
going to write a song about you. You're going to not want to hear.
Put on an oven mitt and treat it with a lot of care.
Yeah.
All right, this is crazy. Chess has gotten so weird recently. I mean, it really has. Remember when like Queen's Gambit came out and everyone's like, okay, everybody's going to start playing chess right now.
Yeah.
Especially women. People are going to start playing chess. It's going to be amazing. And then this weird story surfaced and people are like back to playing checkers. They're like, I can't do it. American Grandmaster Hans Niemann categorically denied on Piers Morgan using vibrating anal beads to receive strategy tips on how to play a showdown victory with Magnus Carlsen. This is kind of like the Jose Altuve, he gets the little...
Take off your shirt. Let me see what you got.
Remember they're trying to rip his shirt off as he's rounding third and he like wouldn't let them? I'm like, why is he not letting them rip the shirt off? Because
If you told me that chess on its own is not enough to stimulate you.
Stimulate you.
You got to get some anal beads going.
Piers Morgan asked him like straight up, Mike Hall, did you? He said categorically no. The match shook up the chess world because Niemann was like the junior champion, and he's playing this Magnus Carlsen is like saying this
Sounds like a strong man.
Sounds like the world's strongest man, Magnus Carlsen. Remember when he won the world's strongest man?
Magnus for Magnuson Carlsen.
He's using his brain as like the strongest muscle in his body. But like when the what's called the Sinquefield Cup in St. Louis, our hometown in 2020.
Don't act like you don't know the Sinquefield Cup.
Look, everyone goes to the Sinquefield Cup, then they go to Ted Drew's for frozen custard, and that's the thing.
He knows.
It's not Shakespeare's Pizza, but it's still good.
Also, it's big enough of a story. Thank you. You know Shakespeare's Pizza. It's big enough of a story for Piers Morgan, who only does interviews with like the biggest people, to be talking to this guy about the world of chess and the use of vibrating anal beads to give you information about someone's strategy. The fact that chess has gone here.
I think he is into vibrating anal beads, and that he is concerned about that information getting out, so he's okay with someone linking it to like information about match.
So he's like, I'm willing to say that
my fetish is so weird that like, and I don't want to yuck his yum. If you like anal beads and they vibrate, then that's your life.
Enjoy it. Have fun. If you want to date Taylor Swift, have fun. Finally, Kurt Schilling.
Remember when you guys said I don't have to comment on certain stuff?
No, we know. He's got a TV job. He's got a TV job.
Speaking of, you may not want to even comment on this. Why is Kurt Schilling still talking? Stop talking. Stop retweeting. Stop all of that. Someone should
shut him down.
Stuff a bloody sock in his mouth
and anal
beads in the vibrated stuff. So he shared an anti-Semitic post on Twitter and X, which while we're here in the time of the high holidays, why would he do that now that addressed the Jewish question, which basically said just terrible stuff about the Jews, like it's such a small group, but they're, again, like this guy, he has statistically, as Adam Wainwright just won 200 games, and the question has gone around, and I don't know if you've really heard this, that after Adam Wainwright and Clayton Kershaw, people are saying there may not be another 200-game winner in Major League Baseball.
Right.
Which is insane to think about that, because we kind of grew up in the year of like 300 was the benchmark.
For sure.
So, I mean, Kershaw's a definite Hall of Famer, first ballot Hall of Famer. There's no question in my mind. Wainwright will probably not make the Hall of Fame. He'll make the Cardinals Hall of Fame. He probably won't make the Hall of Fame. Had he not had those 2 years of the Tommy John surgery and the Achilles issue where he completely missed, he could be around 230, 235 wins, in which case I would say,
he's in.
He might be in at that point, right. 240. But he's not going to do it again. Kurt Schilling has all the statistics to make it into the Hall of Fame. What it does is it forces the Hall of Fame to now say, are we going to let this guy who is like retweeting anti-Semitic stuff, like what is the Hall of Fame? What does it mean, like to be a member of this society? Like,
what's the line?
And I guess I'd pose that question to you because you're a sports guy too. Like, what should the Hall of Fame be?
I mean, I've always thought it should be a museum, and it shows you what happened, and you should have Sosa and McGuire and Bonds, and you can make 90% of his plaque about how he cheated if you wanted to.
Agreed.
Fine, because he deserves that. But it just feels like to pretend this great player wasn't a great player. Like, I don't know. When I think of Schilling, obviously he has, since he stopped playing, he really Caddyshack-2'd his career. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he's doing his best to make people not like what we liked him for.
Right.
And that's such a shame because, man, that I know we talked the bloody sock and what he did for Boston, but how about the 0-1 World Series?
Yeah, when in right after 9/11, when the world was behind New York, Arizona beats New York because of him.
I mean, it was and Randy Johnson.
I mean, he was. I always think, I'm a big baseball guy, and I think all the rule changes this year are marvelous. The next big step we have to take to get that sport back to where it was is starting pitchers have to matter again.
Yeah.
Because when Kurt Schilling was on the mound, you paid attention because before he said crazy, ridiculous stuff all the time, he was this unbelievable hurler. And that's what I want to remember him by, is how incredible he was.
He actually was, and people told us about this in MLB. He was like one of the best citizens in baseball too. He was constantly winning
award.
Yeah, he won these awards of humanitarianism, and you're like, how did that guy?
He got radicalized.
He got radicalized in a weird way, which is like, and by the way, I agree with you. I think
Pete Rose should be there. I think Pete Rose, that's an unbelievable accomplishment to not have represented in the Hall of Fame.
I think he should be in there.
He should be in the Hall of Fame, but he should not be allowed to make a speech
and not be allowed to be a part of the weekend.
So those are the consequences. That's the consequences of your life choices. Mean that you don't get to come to events.
You never
But we will put you in the hall. You can come visit the hall. You can come come visit the hall and see where your thing is there, but you are not allowed to speak at events. You are not allowed to come to events. That's the consequences of your actions. You don't get all of the things that the hall. You get into the Hall of Fame for football. You get into the Hall of Fame for baseball. You are part of this fraternal order that stays with you through dinners and through events and through things for the rest of your life.
It might help your speaking fee raise as you go through and help you because you've earned it. Pete Rose earned it on the field. Like as a player, he earned it with all the hits he got. As a coach, he cheated. And that's bad for the game, and it's a huge mark on the game. And so as a result, you're banished. You can never participate. I would argue that you should not even be allowed to see the plaque. Just you're in. You got the thing you wanted, which was your accomplishments were recognized, but you are not allowed to come near it. And I would say, Curt Schilling, you're kind of doing. There's a moral standard with which that you need to hold. And by the way, people can be like, well, Ty Cobb killed a guy. You know what I mean? Like Ty Cobb, you want to talk about racists. It was Napoleon Lapj. You know, like they'll throw these names around like these guys are racist and this, that. The Hall of Fame can evolve over time and say, like, look, we put up with that stuff a long time ago, and we don't do that now because we've evolved as a society. And so you can be, I agree with you, you can be in, but you cannot come in. Right? How about that?
Yep. I like it. I have no problem with saying, here are the great things this person did.
Yep.
But also, here are the bad things he did. And you can't tell the story ignoring one or the other.
How about this?
Of the plaque.
My pitch. There is a steroid section of the Hall of Fame where they acknowledge
it's a larger hall than it should have been.
And there's a juice bar in there.
There's a juice bar in there.
A juice bar
right there. I love this. This is a great idea. Last question for you before we let you go. Right now, as it sits, I believe it is Georgia, Ohio State, USC, and Michigan. Is that right? Texas and Michigan.
Sure.
I believe is the four. Who ends up the season as we're sitting here right now in week 5? Who ends up the season as the final four? And give us your pick for the championship game and who's going to win it all.
I think Georgia's in because I think the SEC is down this year.
I agree with that.
And
agreed.
I just don't see anyone beating them. And an undefeated SEC team, even in a down year, will get in. I do think USC is going to make it as well. Mm-hmm. And I hesitate to say this, but I really think 2 spots will go to the Big Ten. But I don't know if it's Michigan, Ohio State, or Penn State. Yeah. At the beginning of the year, I said I think Penn State's going to win the division. Now, I also said Illinois would win the other one, so I wouldn't listen to what I thought. But I do think 2 of those 3, Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan, some way, 2 of them will get into the playoffs.
It's amazing.
Yeah, all right. And that's all. And what's great about this division and what's great about this season is that they will all play each other. So it will be decided on the field. That's not a question of 2 guys. People going, well, these 2 teams, who looks better? You're gonna know.
You will get that ever so popular eye test that we.
The ball don't lie.
The ball don't lie, as Rasheed Wallace says.
The ball don't lie on my call. The hall don't lie.
The hall don't lie. I love the hall. Mike Hall, thank you for joining us. Thank you for giving us of your precious time. We know it is. We're in the midst of football season. Thank you.
We'll keep supporting you and watching you, as I know millions of other people do. Thank you.
Well, if my parents don't, at least I got you two. Thanks.
You got us. You always have us. All right, let's take a break. We come back. Interesting voicemail from Ozzie Guillen. That's on the other side of the break. Hey, guys, welcome back to the show. Mike Hall.
I love Mike Hall.
Mike Hall. I love Mike Hall. Great guy. Knows his stuff. Won't talk about anal beads, and I respect that about him.
He's
chess playing
TV.
Anal beads. Yeah, I get it. I get it. Speaking of craziness, and that was crazy, we got a voicemail from our old friend Ozzie Guillen, who I guess has some ideas and thoughts for Coach Prime. Is that it? Well, let's take a listen.
Hey, Jason O'Ronnie. It's Ozzie Guillen. I'm calling you about one thing. I called everyone is excited about Coach Dion, Prime Time. I love Coach Dion. I love Coach Prime. I love that guy, and I drink Prime. That's a great energy drink. But I was talking to him recently because I need him to understand that you can have success, but then you're going to play against a team like the Duck, and then you're going to get your butt kicked, and all of a sudden you have to learn to lose with grace as well as win with grace. So I said, Coach Prime, you have to be homo. You must be homo. Because if you're too cocky, then you're going to get taken down a peg and someone else is going to make you homo. So anyhow, I let him know I thought you guys might be interested in that. I told Coach Prime you have to be homo. Okay, guy, give me a call.
You got to listen to Ozzy.
You got to listen to Ozzy. He knows. He knows. That Bobby Yanks. He knows. What a great episode. I love this so much. We'll see you guys in Fort Collins next week. Get your tickets for those shows. I think those shows might sell out.
They might.
Fort Collins, Colorado, right outside of Denver. We're going to do those shows, and I just can't wait. So that's at the Comedy Fort. We have a show in LA on October 10th, which is going to be awesome at the Bourbon Room, Night of 1,000 Sklars. October 18th, we're doing another Tag It at the Comedy Store. And then November 6th, we'll be at Largo with a Tag It with Kumail Nanjiani is going to be on that show amongst other great people. That is going to be a blast. And then just all supersklars.com. Again, we'll be in Cleveland in December. We'll be in Springfield, Missouri in November. We'll be in Portland at Helium, and Seattle the next night in beginning of January. Back in Denver at Comedy Works and end of January, beginning of February. Mark Ridley's Comedy Castle in Detroit, the end of February, beginning of March. And then at the beginning of April, we are going to be at Acme in Minneapolis. Supersklars.com. You can get all the tickets there. We love you guys. Punch a waterfall. We are out.